What's up, everybody? I am your host, Buttery Stale Popcorn, and that is my co-host, A Sticky Movie Theater Floor. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate Fresh Meat Review on In a Violent Nature. You guys know how it goes. We just arrived home from the theater. We have not spoken a single word to each other about the film. That means no elbow nudges in the seat, no hallway talk on the way out, and definitely no car chatter. We walked straight in the door and right in front of these mics. Now, if this is your first Fresh Meat review, I will explain how it goes. So, the first half of this episode is going to be no spoilers. So, if you're on the fence about seeing the film, but you don't want it ruined, you just kind of want whether it was good or bad, we got you covered. Then, after a fair warning, we'll give a warning. We will then jump right into the nitty gritty and talk about everything we loved and hated after this viewing. So, opening night. We were at the first showing on the first night in a very tiny theater. A very small. How many rows you think it had? Like 7?
It had 5.
Five rows?
The theater was bigger than I thought. I thought it was like a normal theater when we went in there, but I don't know. When I picked the seats, I always thought there was more than 5 rows, and it was definitely only 5 rows. I counted.
It seemed a little smaller to me. I mean, I guess they would have one smaller theater, but
Well, they only gave it one showtime.
Yeah,
and one showtime tomorrow. So I think maybe they had to save some theaters for people to go hate the strangers.
yeah, it was probably showing that in like 3 different theaters or something. I have been following this film since January or February. I remember hearing about it when it debuted at Sundance, and I got to see a trailer for it and have been just super excited ever since the trailer. I think I immediately told you about it, and I think we watched the trailer right after, and we were both like, we're going to fucking see that, because it's very much a kind of Jason Friday the 13th vibe. Well, the trailer was. So, because we don't ever get any fucking Friday the 13th movies, we were excited to see it. It's not Jason, but it's similar. Close enough.
Yeah, the trailer was 100%. That was my first thought, is this character totally looks like it's designed from Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, and we'll get into it a little more. I mean, there are some similarities to Friday the 13th, but it is a very different movie.
Yeah, but watching the trailer, what we were talking about is very, it has that feel that Friday the 13th, a big guy killing people in the woods.
Yep.
But you could tell from the trailer it's very independent. It's a beautiful movie. And you also got a glimpse of some violence in the trailer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was stoked to watch this one.
So, what is this movie about, you may ask? Well, I will tell you. When a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by the horrific 60-year-old crime, his body is resurrected and becomes hell-bent on retrieving it. Yeah, so there's a backstory to it. We'll kind of give you a little bit of a brief overview of the backstory. First, let's talk about the rating. So, Rotten Tomatoes, 87%. It dropped a little bit because this morning it was a 90. So, it's come down a little bit. IMDb gave it a 6 out of 10. Letterboxd gave it a 3.1 out of 5, and this is surprising, the Google average audience rating is a 2 stars out of 5.
Wow.
So this is all over the place.
2 stars out of 5.
Yeah, so we got a really high rating. We got like kind of 2 medium ratings, and then we got kind of a lower rating. So this is everywhere. And that makes sense though, because this is a movie that some people are going to really like and some people are going to absolutely fucking hate it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be into these type of movies for one. You gotta, if you're one that doesn't like the gruesome, violent movies, if you don't like independent films, and then another thing is the pace. The pace is
Oh,
one
yeah.
that's gonna get a lot of people. My thought was, I thought it was a really great movie. We'll get into talking about it. Thought it was fucking awesome, but I could see if you're one that picks at the pace a lot and you only like faster paced movies, this is not gonna be like I could see where somebody like that would have some complaints.
So, In a Violent Nature is a 2024 Canadian slasher film written and directed by Chris Nash. Described as an ambient slasher, the film follows a mute killer who targets a group of teenagers in the Ontario wilderness, with the events observed largely from the killer's perspective. In a Violent Nature premiered on January 22nd, 2024 at the Sundance Film Festival as part of the festival's midnight program, and was theatrically released in the United States and Canada by IFC Films on May 31st. That is today. It is scheduled to be released on a streaming service Shudder later in the year. It stars Andrea Pavlik, Cameron Love, Rebecca Presley, Liam Leone, and Ray Barrett as the back from the dead killer himself. Nash drew inspiration for the film's style from the Gus Van Sant films Jerry from 2002, Elephant from 2003, and Last Days from 2005, which Nash characterized as slower, more methodical, more deliberate, and follow characters through a scene. Nash also cited the work of director Terrence Malick as an influence. In a Violent Nature emphasizes static long take shots and features no musical score. Do you think that the not having any music benefited or hurt the movie?
For me, it benefited the movie, especially this particular movie because of what it was. It's such a different spin, getting it from the perspective of the killer. I thought having no musical score was 100% the right call with that for me. It felt like it's one of the few times that I can say it really felt like you were there while it was happening. So I made this comment to Brooke. She said I was a psychopath, but I felt the movie at times was strangely very relaxing. It had an ASMR feel to it. Very quiet, like the footsteps through the woods, and you hear everything as if you
Yeah.
were there.
I will agree with that because one thing I would, if I could really just baseline give it to somebody as simple as I could, I would say it's like a nature documentary with Jason Voorhees in it. If I had to really strip it down and I had to just give a super simple answer what this movie is, because there is a lot of nature scenes, a lot of like scenic shots. Shit, I mean 90% of the fucking movie is a scenic shot where I mean a lot of this movie is you're kind of watching him stalk and kill this group. And that includes all of these walks through this forest. So I could see how you could come to that conclusion because one thing that does happen that some people are either going to really like or really hate is the travel time for the character that the killer in the movie. We're kind of behind him watching him travel for quite some time throughout the movie here and there.
One of the really cool things about that though is you get from the because you're in the perspective of the killer. It gives you an idea, like he'll be walking through the woods and he'll hear something off in the distance, and it gives you an idea of how in like Friday the 13th and stuff, how Jason tracks these people down because
Yeah.
you don't realize when you're watching the movie, when you're in quiet woods, how loud a car driving, even if it's a decent bit away, if a car hits its horn, you're gonna hear it, or if there's gunshots or people partying out by a campfire. And you get that a lot in this movie. It really shows you how it's not magic that he just ends up where these people are.
It's the
He's
noise they're
yeah.
creating.
Yeah, he's just doing his thing and he hears it and it attracts him.
Yeah, there's times in this movie where he's going the wrong way. Like he is just randomly walking and then he hears, them partying or shooting a gun or something and he like stops and figures out which direction it's coming from and then goes that way. Another thing cuz I haven't really decided fully whether the music thing was good or bad. I mean, I think for the majority of the movie it was a good choice, but there are some scenes where I thought the music could have benefited it, and one thing that was really weird, the beginning where he is actually, like, coming back to life. So that scene's weird without music because you know, he doesn't do it fast, like, it's not a fast thing, it takes time, and when I was watching it, I was like, maybe some creepy music could be playing here because we're just getting into the movie. But at the same time, I don't know, it was like I thought in my head also, like, "Is this what Jason does when he comes back alive? Is this
Well,
what it's
well,
like?"
well, it is. There's not music playing in that world. There's not suspense music playing out of a speaker while he's coming out of the ground. I 100% think that the no music and no score benefited this. I'm not saying that I think every movie should have no score because I think the scores in some movies are absolutely beautiful. The original Friday the 13th,
Yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street, like those movies wouldn't feel the same without the scores that they have. Halloween, I mean
The
that's
Exorcist.
iconic. Yeah, The
Yeah.
Exorcist. So, definitely they're iconic for movies, but with this movie being the movie that it is, which is it's like you were literally walking step for step behind this killer through the woods and seeing how he makes his decisions, how he does certain things. I thought no music was perfect for this particular film.
So, let's talk a little bit with no spoilers about the kills. So, that was one of the things that got me even more excited was me hearing about the lengths they went to do really good practical effects in this movie. And it seems like lately we're getting these like really amazing practical effects out of very low budget movies.
Well, we're getting also into a time where, and maybe for the first time, where these movies with independent movies are having a lot of success and they're not having to worry about ratings boards.
Yeah,
So they
this is a unrated. Went to
yeah.
the theaters completely unrated, and I will say that this movie could not have been what it was rated. Not even rated R.
No, because the kills are, it's very raw. It's like you're there. They're not skipping around. It's not skipping camera scenes and has all this music in the back. It's like you're standing there watching them happen. But yeah, we're in a really interesting time where these independent films are having a lot of success, and they're able to get these. They're not having to get ratings to make the studio happy. They're getting into theaters now, being unrated, which was a thing that used to never happen. And I'll say when it comes to the kills, without going into detail, this movie is I'm gonna say, Terrifier vibes.
Yeah,
Definitely big time Terrifier vibes. I know that's saying a lot because Terrifier is known for being one of the most gruesome, awesome practical effect movies, but this is up there with them.
yeah, I remember hearing something just days ago that there was a kill that was, like, close to being on par with the Terrifier 2 bedroom scene. And I remember every single like, right before we did every kill in this movie thinking, "Is this gonna be it?" And I will say one thing this movie does, and if you hate this, you're gonna have a problem with this movie, but this movie really does you think like, "Okay, he's about to get him," and they really drag that out on some of the kills. They really could do that kind of repeatedly with some of these kills. Some of them are instant, and then other ones are this kind of, I don't wanna say cat and mouse game. It's almost like the mouse doesn't know that the cat is on its tail.
I think that that's really I really like that about the movie. This actually shows how's how these like he does certain things and kills to, like, for example, without going into detail, like he'll cause a distraction and go around the other side of a house.
Yeah,
And
that was great.
and it's, yeah, it's totally like things that the whole time these things were happening, I'm thinking of Friday the 13th movies and these kills that we're seeing, but we don't see the setup. And there, in Friday the 13th movies, there's always these setups. At least in the older ones, there would be like somebody'd be walking and a body would fall out of the tree or something, and then they'd turn around and get killed. And you actually get to see the setup and the thought process behind it, but he does it so smooth too. Like he's so smooth and methodical. The kills are dragged out because he does get close, but he's doing it in a way to not be discovered. Like he's, especially in the beginning of the movie, he's biding his time. Every step is a very methodical, thought out step till he finally gets close enough to strike. And then when he does, it's so fast. It's like it reminds me of a snake.
Yeah,
A snake,
yeah, I can see that.
being really quiet, curled up, waiting for a mouse to go by, and then when it finally gets in reach, bam, that's it.
Yeah, there are a few scenes where it's not necessarily focusing on him. We're actually doing because they, of course they introduce the group of, young adults or whatever that are there to be slaughtered. But they introduce them, and one thing that's really cool is even though we're not like, almost POV behind him, you actually see him in the background as they're talking, like just standing back there, and it's so hard to see, but you can see him back there. And so they keep him in a lot of the frames that they aren't focused on him. They're focused on, because what would you say about 90, at least 90% of the movie is him,
Yeah.
is with him.
Yeah, there's only a handful of scenes that's
Yeah.
not focused on him. But like you said, he's in almost all of those scenes. That even if he's not, it's not following him. He's in the background, and it it really shows like in real life if this was happening to these people, you if you knew where to look, you would be able to see somebody in the woods. But because you don't know it's there, you would never see it if you didn't know it was there. But because we followed him in and we know exactly where he's standing when they do cut to this scene. There's a couple of these scenes, but one in particular, you can see him in the background in the woods, and you can see the moon kind of illuminating part of his head and shoulder. So, and that's him, but if you didn't see that scene before following
Yeah.
him in,
Yeah.
you would never put together that that's a person. And I thought that was really cool. The whole premise of this movie was really cool. This movie's really weird in the sense that it doesn't have a lot of character building at all. We
No,
we
almost
don't.
none.
Yeah, but the main character building that does happen is with the killer. And
That's pretty much all, yeah.
he doesn't talk, but he does certain mannerisms, and you follow him around and see, what really pisses him off and what doesn't. And you get an idea, even though he doesn't speak, you get an idea of how he feels. Or maybe not how he feels, but kind of what sets him off. And it's interesting that it's the only movie where the camera follows a killer around the whole time. The killer doesn't speak. You don't really see his face, but maybe for a couple seconds in the whole movie. But yeah, all the character building in the movie is him. And I was thinking about it, and because we're gonna cover this movie in full, because it's gonna be one of my picks if it's not yours. It's gonna be really, really difficult when we're writing a plot because there's not a whole lot of plot to it. A
No.
lot of it's just you're just strapped onto the back of this killer and you're going to the woods, and because there's not character building and you're not following the people that he's killing, there's not a whole lot of plot to talk about. And I was thinking why this was happening. that you could take the main characters and shoot this like a Friday the 13th, not following the killer, and this could be a whole separate movie. The same exact scenario. Them at the party, them slowly figuring out, something's going on here, all this stuff, and it could be a completely different movie, but take place at the exact same timeline. And it makes you think for all those Friday the 13th, there's a separate movie like this
Yeah.
in the background that follows Jason around, and you can see every one of his methodical moves he makes. And I just thought that was really awesome.
So we're pretty much at our end of our spoiler-free version of this. So quickly, with the movie fixing to come out on, well, I wouldn't say fixing to come out on Shutter, but it's going to come out, on Shutter. I'd say within the next few months. Typically, how they've been doing it. So with the movie going to be coming out on streaming fairly soon, would you recommend someone go to the theater and see this, or hold out for streaming?
I 100% would recommend going to the theater if you can, because the whole how we talked about there's no score and there's no music, you get a lot of nature. This is a lot of what's going on. It's a lot of nature, and being in the surround sound and seeing it's such a beautiful movie. There's so many beautiful shots. Seeing it on the big screen, I would definitely say go to the theaters and see it if you can.
Well, I would say if you really like practical effects and you're really into slashers and you have an open mind, go to the theater and see it. If you're not a big slasher fan, you're kind of, take it or leave it with the practical effects. I could see, waiting for streaming. My personal opinion is I feel like they could have removed like 10 or 15 minutes of the travel time. Like, some of it could have been taken out because there's a lot of that. Whether you like the movie or don't like the movie, I think everybody can agree that we do spend a lot of time just kind of going through the woods. And some people aren't going to like that. So if that's not something that you were interested in spending, however much money it costs you and your friends or whatever to go to the theater, then catch it on streaming. But I would say if you're a slasher fan, especially like a Friday the 13th or sleepaway camp type deal, check this out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That argument kind of comes down to whether or not you would suggest watching the movie at all to somebody. If you hate slow paced movies, you're not a fan of slashers or good practical effects, I probably wouldn't watch this movie at all.
Yeah. If you get queasy.
But if you're into that stuff, I would definitely suggest theaters. The audio and visuals that you get in this movie, I can't say what it looks like, sitting at home watching it because we haven't yet. But I can say watching it in the theaters it was really good, and like I said, it was weirdly relaxing. Like a lot, if you're into ASMR, go watch this movie because it has some very relaxing parts. I know that sounds weird considering what the movie's about, but I actually enjoyed a lot of that travel time and stuff. I think this movie needed that to show that there's not just shit happening all the time, and show a scene with him kind of just traveling around and hear something off in the distance. But yeah, I would definitely say theater.
So that is going to be the end of our spoiler free version of this episode. If you have seen the movie or you don't care, then stay tuned because now we're going to jump into all of the fun stuff we couldn't talk about. So here is your we'll give you what, like 5 seconds to cut it off before you hear any spoilers. All right, so now we're going to talk about some of the really, really fun things. So that fucking kill how am I going to describe this kill? Where he puts his fucking hand through the back of her and then attaches the hook to her forehead and then pulls the chain and the hook back through her body, which pulls her fucking head into her torso and out of her back.
Yeah, he when he go all right, so for those that haven't seen this, so he comes up behind her and he has this hook. It's like a big ass hook. What would you say this hook's used? Like a meat hook or
Yeah,
something.
they talk about
It's
it being for
big.
like a rescue, like a fireman could just hook it onto your body and
You
pull you out of a
th-
fire.
this would be a hook that you would hook if you were like if all you had was a chain and you were trying to tow a car out. Like
Yeah,
this is
kind of.
this is a hook that you would use to hook onto something. So he takes this hook and jabs it through her back and out of her stomach. He lets go of the hook and pulls his arm back through, turns her around facing him, and takes the hook and jabs it through her head. So now it's hooked into her head and the chain is going through her stomach and out her back. And then turns her around again and literally pulls her fucking head through the front of her stomach and out of her back.
It's wild. I mean, it's fucking wild. Like, whoever thought of this kill is demented. I wouldn't have never put that together in my mind. Like, at first I thought, okay, he's gonna pull and like her face is gonna rip off or, or something like that. I did not expect her body to stay intact. And then one of the really awesome little details that you see is as her body is beginning to fold into itself, that main bone on top of your spine, like it starts sticking like out of her skin, but it doesn't break the skin. And that was just one of those details that I just noticed that was like, holy shit. Because obviously that was, it's got to be a fake person, some kind of thing they made. But for them to put that kind of detail where you see like her skin tighten and like those bones show. But man, that's wild. Absolutely wild kill.
Yeah, whoever thought about this is one, that's one thing, but to be somebody who does special effects and to hear this kill, it makes my brain hurt thinking of how are we going to do this? How are we even going to build something
Oh
and
yeah.
pull this off and make it look and it looked really good. There was one very quick shot when the neck gives way and it's very quick that I thought didn't look that great. I'll say you could tell it wasn't a person when it happens.
I thought it all
But
looked amazing.
I mean, it's literally incredible looking. And my favorite part about this kill is that, like in a lot of horror movies, like a Friday the 13th, you have that supernatural power where it just rips it in one hit. No, it is like a minute and a half, 2 minute scene of him, at least a minute,
Yeah, it's long.
of him pulling at this chain over, and you can hear all her bones snapping and her tendons breaking. And I mean, he literally has to like continuously pull and pull and pull until it finally snaps through. And because there's no music or score in the background,
It's
you
uncomfortable.
you hear everything. I mean, it literally is just like I said, every bone and tendon and shit breaking, and him just pulling at this chain as hard as he can. It was done amazing, and that kill was when I was like, okay, that was Terrifier level. Like that was a Terrifier level kill,
I
and super super creative. Who would have ever thought about that?
I really liked the not it's not the first kill of the movie, but it's the first kill we see because there's only one. There's like two we don't really actually visually see, but the first one we really see where he has like that wire. It's like a wire or something that he slips around that guy. Because I want to say that was a Jason kill. Like Jason's done that kill. I think he did it with a belt though.
He did do
And
it with the belt, but the belt was around the eyes.
yeah, but he slips this around his mouth and he ends up cutting the dude's fucking top of his, not the top, like half of his head off.
Yeah.
And it looked good when it happened, but then you get to see it a couple more times because he literally drags the fucking body around by just sticking his hand in like the neck hole and just pulling it around.
Yeah, he used for when he broke it off at, like, where your jaw's at, but a little higher, like, where your gums of your top of your mouth is. It's really hard to tell if this was a wire. I thought it was a wire at first, and then after the kill, I thought it kinda looked like just like a long blade, because it actually sticks into the tree. When he gets done and it finally gives way, he lets go of it and it's stuck into the tree. So it's really hard to tell. It definitely does look like a wire when you're watching the kill. A lot of this movie's shot in the dark.
Yeah,
So you definitely when it does come out in streaming and you're watching it at home, you might want to adjust your TV settings so
yeah,
you
that's a
can
good
see
idea.
some. But yeah, the him carrying the body around, and since this the spoiler free part of it, once you find out what you find out at the end of the movie, which is or towards the end, that this ranger is the son of the guy who killed him like the first time he came back, and then he came back and killed them, and then this ranger now killed him last time or put him down. He, knowing that it's the ranger, goes to this ranger station and drags this body there to fucking leave it there for this guy to find. And it's just he like you were talking about, he's holding the head through the mouth hole and he just throws it through the fucking window. And my favorite part of that whole scene is where he finds his mask, or he decides to wear the mask, and he chucks the dude's body through the
Oh,
glass.
yeah.
Like, I don't know why, but that scene was just perfect.
Because it didn't look like, you know how like a lot of the bodies when they use the fake bodies, you can tell by the way it flops around. This does not do that.
Yeah, it felt like it had weight, like a real body, but he literally ragdolls it into this fucking, like, glass case to get this mask out of there. And, I mean, it was phenomenal.
Another thing this movie does really well is this is really, I would say, the first horror film that I can say did nighttime woods. Very realistic. There are some shots where you can't really see shit. A lot of times, like I think we talked about it the last Friday the 13th that we had covered, how bright the woods were. I mean, you can really see everything within 30 feet, 40 feet. Like it's ridiculously bright. And I get why they do that. I wouldn't want every movie to be the woods be this dark. But for what this movie was going for, I think that was a smart idea. We see in the end when kind of, I guess you'd call her the final girl. She wasn't that final to me, but as she's running through the woods and it's so dark, I mean, you can't really, it sometimes it gave me Blair Witch vibes.
Yeah, it's very creepy in the sense that they did do the moonlight, but they did it a lot more realistic.
Yeah,
So
it's
you can
realistic.
see, and I think certain scenes it's a little more lighter, like at the end, but you know you're in the killer's perspective, and you can actually at the end he stops and he can hear them whispering through the woods
Oh, that's such a
because
great scene.
they don't know exactly where he's at because the woods are dark. But you realize that from a killer's perspective, he can hear them whispering, and now he knows where they're at, and they don't know where he's at. And I just thought that was brilliant. I thought
Yeah, that's a great scene. Like, that's a you know what's crazy too is so we're behind him in this scene, we're behind him, and he's obviously, he's looking forward and he can hear the whispering and the whispering is like in front of him. And you can see her. You can see her trying to stand there. She's holding that gas can and she blends in very well. But then you hear her boyfriend like, "I'm gonna distract him or something, and I'm not gonna let him hurt you." And then he pops up behind the guy.
well,
And it's even surprising to us, the audience, of like, holy shit.
I don't know if you caught it when he says that. You actually can see him walk off
I
to the
can't, I could
right
barely see him move.
out of camera, which is where he went around, and you can still kind of hear him moving over there whenever he goes off to the right. So, I mean, it puts in perspective. in a real life situation, they don't know exactly where he's at. They definitely don't know that he can hear them fucking whispering their whole entire plan. But if you didn't hear the whispering, it would be really hard to pinpoint where she's at or even see her because she's like halfway behind this tree. And there's even a point where you can see her peek around the tree to get a look at him or looking for him. And you can see it because you just heard them whispering and he's looking right over there. But if you watch this movie on mute, you would probably have a really hard time spotting her. And it makes that realism from the perspective of a killer so much better. You watch these movies and you're like, they came up with that plan, and then how did Jason know that he was going to pop up right behind him? Well, because you're in the dark woods and he wasn't that far away when you whispered your fucking plan. Like he's literally looking at you.
Yeah, I think, as somebody who really appreciates sound and lighting, even the stuff you do with your camera when you're filming, I think this is probably one of the most brilliant scenes in the movie, in the whole entire movie. This is a great scene. A lot of people would probably look at it and not think a lot about it because it's really hard to see. But, if you're thinking of like what the movies went for with this realism the whole time, this scene could not have been filmed any better than that. It was a great job.
Yeah, one of the few, because I didn't read much about this movie at all, but I did see somebody post it and I was reading a little bit. And it was posted without spoilers because I didn't want to know anything about the plot or anything. But people complaining that most of the movie was shot in the dark and you can't see anything. I will highly disagree with that. I think more of the movie is shot in the daytime
Oh, a
than it
lot
is
more
at,
is, yeah.
at night. So I don't get that argument that most of it's shot in the dark. I would say maybe 25% of it, 30.
A lot of the ending
Yeah,
is,
25
but
to 35% of it is in the dark. But you get even though it's in the dark, you still see enough to know what's going on, and you get a more realistic perspective of everything. I also love how we get that first day, and it gets into the dark, and he can hear them as it's starting to get dark, and he goes out there, and he kind of stalks them for a while. And then it was like the cat and mouse we talked about. That guy went outside to he was gonna go talk to some chicks at a gas station, but I guess he started like hitting a bowl or something out there, getting a pie because a bunch of chiefing ass motherfuckers don't want to contribute any weed. So he's like, I'm gonna sneak out here and smoke my own weed. And
it's realistic.
yeah, so he goes out there and he slowly but surely gets to him. He eventually kills him, which is the kill we were talking about. Looks like The Wire, and that's it. He chills out for the rest of the night until the daytime. So you get this weird perspective where you get this in a Friday the 13th movie and, somebody dies and then it's the next day and you don't really think about, what did Jason do during that time? He has them in this house. Like he could have went in and killed them in this house, but they don't know he's there yet. So he picks this one off and bides his time and waits until the next day.
Yeah, so before we end it, I want to talk about the ending. Honestly, I will say of all the things I like about this movie, the very, very ending, I did not like.
Agreed. That was
I think that this movie had done so much in this short amount of time, and then we get to this ending, and I'm not really sure why the very, very, very end was in the movie.
Yeah, I get that they're trying to convey her like having PTSD. She just went through this crazy scenario. She gets picked up, she's driving down the road. The lady stops, which happens in a lot of horror movies, and of course, she's freaking out like, "No, you can't stop." And of course, there's got to be a reason for the person to stop, and which is to tie a tourniquet on her leg. And she's freaking out and she's staring off into the woods and you're waiting to see him come through the woods. But he never shows up and the movie kind of ends.
Oh yeah, it was like edging.
I
Like
thought,
I was so ready for it and it never came.
well, I was wondering what they were going to do because the scene is so long, they drive a far way.
Yeah, it's too
And I'm
long.
like, how, as realistic as this movie's been, how is he going to show up when they've been driving around for 10 minutes at this point, driving down the road? Like, they're pretty far away from where he was at this point. And I think the story that that lady tells has more significance to it. I think that it wasn't a bear, and
Yeah, it was him.
the lady knows it was him.
Mhm.
But they actually mention whenever they're sitting around the campfire telling the story about him in the beginning that the whole town knows about it, but nobody wants to talk about it. Very similar to what you hear in early Friday the 13th. Like, the whole town knows about it, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. So I think that story was put in there to show she knows what went after this girl. She knows it was him, but she uses a bear in his place to try to tell this
Yeah.
story. And because nobody wants to mention his name or mention the situation. I think that I don't mind the story at all. I just thought the scene was too long.
Yeah, I don't, for it being that long and the story never really leads anywhere. Like the guy gets rescued.
The
He
guy.
the guy in the story she's telling the story
Oh,
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He gets rescued. No one ever catches the quotation the bear. No one ever really knows where it went, what happened. I just don't see any reason for that. I hope maybe somebody eventually figures it out and I don't know, puts a theory on the internet that makes more sense to me, or the writer director comes out and makes this make more sense. But
Well, I think you want to hold on that because I think we're going to get something out of it when we actually cover the movie. I know when we did like Late Night with the Devil, my second watch, like everything I was cloudy about was completely clear when I watched it back again. I think that story was because she kind of talks about, she mentions it's called like the hen house. I don't know, what was it that the hen house.
the hen fever.
Yeah, hen fever, hen house fever, which is when an animal goes rogue. It's normally like coyotes and they just kill everything they can. Not for food, just killing to kill. And she's kind of trying to tell this girl, like, we don't know exactly why, we don't know why this happened, but we know that this guy was killing just to kill. And, we think maybe very similar to what happens in these animals' brain is what happens in his, and he just kills anything that he can. But yes, it was very. I hope when we watch it again, when it comes out on streaming and we cover it, we get a really good theory for that. But regardless, even if there was like a cool bottom line under that whole story that we didn't catch, and we catch it next time, I thought the scene was too long. I thought it was too long of a scene, and I would have liked for there to be something at the end to end on, like some type of surprise or maybe jump scare when she's looking into the woods, like even if it's just you see him walking, but he doesn't go after her, like something at the end, but we don't get that. It just kind of ends. He gets this he gets this necklace back, and that's kind of the end of it. You don't know what happens to him after that. We know he's not buried unless he went and buried himself. So, we don't know. We just don't know. One thing I do want to bring up though, I don't know if you had any more to say about that. One thing I do want to bring up, I know we talked specifically about one of the kills, which is probably the one people equate to as Terrifier, like the most. But I think this may have been, I think I like this kill more, although it wasn't as creative. But there's a kill in this movie, which is actually where he goes and kills the ranger that killed him before. He breaks this guy's neck in a way that doesn't kill him, but paralyzes him and takes him to something that I didn't even know existed. I know they have them, but I guess this is an old one. And it chops wood. And he literally cuts this guy up with this thing while he's still alive. Like cuts his arm off, and you can actually see the guy's eyes moving around as this shit's happening. And it's so fucking eerie and creepy because you can see the guy's face, his eyes moving. You know he's alive, but he can't do anything about it. And when he cuts the guy's fucking head off with that thing, it looked amazing.
Yeah, it looked really good.
That may have been my favorite kill of the movie.
Oh, wow.
Despite the other one was probably the most surprising, but the fact that he left that guy alive for that was I thought it was great.
All right, so I don't think, well, I guess, I was going to say I don't think we need to do favorite kill, but if that's your favorite kill, I'm going to go with, of course, the lady with her head pulled through her body. That was amazing. All right, so your first viewing off the top of the head, what are you rating it?
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. It kind of puts me on the spot. This is a hard movie to rate because it's so different from any other movie.
I agree.
And because of that, I'm actually, me personally, I'm going to give it a 4.6.
Whoa.
Yeah. I really liked it.
Wow.
I don't want to give it any higher than that because of the ending. The ending was too long, as we already talked about, and it didn't really lead anywhere. But the slow pace, I loved the slow pace for this movie. I know that's a complaint that people have. I thought it was great. I thought it was very therapeutic, almost like relaxing with the ASMR type, there being no other noises but nature and this guy walking around and then his kills. And I think this is such a different movie than anything that we had ever seen before. The practical effects were great, the story idea was great, and the movie was absolutely fucking beautiful from a cinematography standpoint. So when I put those things together, I'm going to say for now, until we cover it again, for now, I'm sitting at a 4.6.
I gave it a 3.8.
Wow. A 3.8?
Yeah, I think that there are some scenes that are they just go on too long. A good example for me was when the girls are on the other side of the lake and she gets in the lake and then he goes in the water. It's like fucking 10-minute long thing
No,
of
I
you
like
just kind
that,
of staring at this lake of these girls that are really far away, and then you finally do see the kill and he just kind of pulls her under. We don't really see anything, and then we get another like minutes long shot, and I thought that stuff was too long. It just was too long. If it would have only been one time, I would have been fine, but I mean that's kind of repeatedly, like again with the ending where that's like a 10-minute long scene of nothing really happens. So yeah, I think that somebody would be able to, like, if somebody edited out like 15 minutes of where there's nothing happening and compacted it a little bit better, I would have a higher rating for it.
See, I like those scenes because of the realism of it. I thought that was just the whole point of this movie was the actual, like, the realism of being there with the killer, why it's happening, and following him around. These things don't happen super quick. If he goes into a lake and has to cross the entire lake and then drown this girl, it's not going to be a super quick, but it's eerie because it drags on and you don't know when something is going to happen. And I actually like that part of it. I could see maybe a 4, but 3.8. I think that's going to go up when we cover it. I'm going to make that prediction because outside of that, like I said, this cinematography wise, this movie is absolutely fucking beautiful. The practical effects are 10 out of 10. And the premise of the story has never been done. So I'm going to give that a 10 out of 10 too. That was just something that we hadn't seen before. And with all those things put together, I think it's got to be up there.
Well, let us know what you guys think if you've seen the movie, and give us your rating, and we would like to hear about it and talk about it and all that good stuff. So Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or a like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, tell a friend, a family member, or your back from the dead killer about the show, and we hope to see you next time.